Okay, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first keynote, and it's Sir Peter Bazalgette, or Baz, as many people know him, who has had a very, very distinguished career in the creative industries. He's currently co-chair of the UK's Creative Industries Council, and he's also chair of the council at the Royal College of Art. So he's joining us today to give his reflections on the new sector vision and views on the creative industry story over the past 2 decades. We are very lucky to have him. Looking forward to this immensely. Welcome, Baz.
Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry? Good morning. Thank you very much. Now, visual descriptions are the order of the day, so I'm a bit wrinkly. Almost 70, a white male, and rather improbably, the lining of my suit is Mr. Men. Well, fashion is a very important part of the creative industries, and fashion should be done with verve. Yeah. Now, good morning again, and some of you may have heard me say some of what I'm going to say this morning before, but I make no apology for that. I'm going to outline today how the creative industries are a sector now characterized by R&D-led innovation. So, I fell upon this with some pleasure, and I've left it up instead of putting my title slide on. Making use of emerging technologies. That is exactly what I'm going to talk about today, and it seems we have a lot of like-minded people in this room, which I'm delighted about. But I'm also going to argue that this morning that this is not properly recognized. It's recognized in this room quite evidently, but not properly recognized outside this room. Deserves more support and investment and offers tremendous possibilities, particularly in terms of economic and social value. I'll also argue this morning that we'll need much more and better data to deliver on this. And if I need any endorsement for the urgency of our enterprise, then who better than Harry Styles, who sings in his #1 hit, As It Was, "Get ahead, light-speed internet." Exactly, Harry, exactly. He's saying, let's get on with it. And again, since visual descriptions are required this morning, Harry looks fantastic in a pink tutu. Harry Styles, by the way, a British artist whose album, Harry's House, was voted Album of the Year at both the Grammys and the Brits. Just one of the reasons why 1 in every 10 tracks streamed worldwide comes from the UK. Right across our creative sector, British ideas are in demand and show us what a great opportunity we have. But we need to change the perception of our sector. Yes, we are about entertainment and cultural enrichment, very important parts on that poll we saw just now, but we're also as much about serious R&D as those well recognized for it, such as life sciences, automotive, and aerospace. And as I like to point out, our sector is easily worth more than those 3 combined. Now, last week, I shared a stage with 4 creators at the Royal Society of Arts, where I talked about some of these themes. The 4 guests with me on stage were the living embodiment of this creative entrepreneurial R&D-led innovation. 4 enterprises built on our expertise in games, fashion, screen, and what we now call Createch. Createch is the beneficial symbiosis which occurs when creative designers collaborate with technologists, such as engineers, programmers, or data scientists. If we nurture this nexus, we'll create enormous value, both culturally and economically. So I had a couple of designers from the Royal College of Art who've produced a prototype handheld medical device that allows women to check their breasts for lumps at home. We had the creator of some screen sharing software that allows friends and families to share the viewing experience while on different continents. I was also joined by a fashion designer who's pioneering 3D printing for garments, which cuts out waste and transport pollution. And finally, we heard from a designer of hit video games, our subsector, which in effect wrote the playbook for Createch. These are the young people, at least young to me at any rate, who are showing us how big our opportunity is. Well, the Creative Industries Council, which is a joint sector government initiative, as many as you know, is about to publish a sector vision. It's intended as a policy framework for the coming decade to capitalize on this opportunity. And it has its main theme, inclusive growth. So that as we turbocharge the sector, we ensure that the whole country benefits and that we're open to all talents. We can, I believe, become the Heineken sector, reaching the parts that other sectors don't reach. We see 3 of the main engines for this as being clusters, university spin-outs, and a drive to improve skills. So let me say a word about each of those this morning. The creative industries have naturally grouped themselves into local clusters where talent congregates and where alliances with local education and local authorities prosper. We've established there are now more than 50 of these. In fact, I think there are more than 70 of these now. Music in Manchester and Sheffield, games in Dundee and Leamington Spa, TV and film in Cardiff and Bristol, fashion in Leeds and London, and so on. I proposed in 2017 in a report for the government that we put some seed corn funding into creative clusters. As many people here know, there were competitive bids, and 9 clusters specialising in screen, fashion, AI and games won a total of £56 million from UK research and innovation. Now, who here in the room was actually involved in one of the clusters? Hands up, please. Fantastic. And I want the rest of you to give them a round of applause because their performance... Their performance has been amazing. As you know, your winning bids had to demonstrate strong local partnerships between universities and business. Our sector is made up of many SMEs, and the whole idea of my proposal was to help national government connect with local talent in a practical way. Government has always had a pro-business, pro-small business rhetoric, but in practice can't really connect with thousands of small enterprises. So, as many of you have put your hands up know, winning bids came in from Bristol, Cardiff, Edinburgh, Belfast, Dundee, Leeds, York and London. These clusters are now in their 5th year and their performance has been nothing short of astonishing. I thought they might achieve a parity of match funding. That's, say, another 56 million. In fact, the number is a stonking 252 million from industry and other sources, and counting. That number is probably already this week slightly higher. Both trade investment and venture capital have been committed to, for instance, immersive video experiences in Doncaster, virtual screen production in Belfast, and e-skins for giving machines a sense of touch in Edinburgh. The creative clusters are connecting the sector with university applied research, working with 2,500 SMEs in the different subsectors, with 700 R&D projects, 227 new startups, and producing 558 new products and services, and as I say, and counting. So the clusters have actually redefined the way industry and university researchers can collaborate. The fruitful ideas that springing from this include game design tech that addresses obesity, robot avatars to help in disaster zones, 16th century art transformed into an immersive experience, virtual reality reducing the pain of childbirth, an app for 3D set designs in theatre and music, high-value yarn from recycled fibres, a leather substitute derived from fungi. I could go on. I think you get the picture. It's greatly to UKI's credit that they back the creative clusters. You'd think it was a no-brainer to go on and fund a second phase to stimulate other regions and subsectors in the same way. For instance, we see great opportunities for music tech, ad tech, publishing tech. They're all part of an emerging career tech story. Well, it's been a bit of an uphill struggle getting the same support for creative clusters too, but I now believe, I hope, my fingers are crossed, that we will have a plan in place by midsummer for clusters too. It's taking a bit of time for some of our institutions to catch up and get with the programme. The 12 new investment zones announced in March's budget made the creative industries, as Christopher just said to us at the beginning, one of the 5 priority sectors for growth. So here's a further opportunity for clusters to grasp if properly supported. I have just lost a page, but I found it. That's good news. A second sector vision engine of growth is university spin-outs. Now, you'll forgive me if I explain what I mean with reference to the Royal College of Art, the RCA, because as you said in the introduction, Caroline, I chair the council there, so I can talk from first-hand experience. The RCA, from its foundation in 1837, always had a rather heady mix of arts and commerce. And that's why it's not only the college of David Hockney and Bridget Riley, but also the place where James Dyson and Thomas Heatherwick graduated from. As you'll have divined from the examples I've already mentioned this morning, Createch depends on interdisciplinarity, and the RCA has been championing this happy symbiosis for some time. We venerate the STEM skills like everyone else, but we like to add the A for arts to make it really dynamic. That spells STEAM, by the way. I do like to point out, as some of you know, that this wouldn't be the first time that STEAM has propelled an industrial revolution. And I'm going to go on cracking that joke till I think everybody in government and education has understood it. A good example is RCA's joint programme with Imperial College, from which many creative spin-out companies now come. In fact, our spin-out programme, Innovation RCA, has now spawned more than 80 funded companies. You may have heard about the mask for cattle that will greatly reduce methane release, or the small device which attaches to tires to collect particles that are now one of the main sources of urban pollution. But I want to give you more of a flavour of the joint programme with Imperial, because it really does back up and illustrate what I'm saying about Createch. The last time I went around the laboratory, I found small teams with, for instance, in those teams, ceramicists and commercial designers working with data scientists and engineers. 2 projects stick in my mind. Judging the health of soil normally involves taking a sample to a laboratory. It's expensive and time-consuming. This team were designing an audio prey which listens out for worms and insects and instantly collects data showing how alive or dead the soil is. Just in the next booth were another group who come up with a novel filter for rainwater flowing into street drains. It removes pollutants like minute particles from tires, and it's novel because it has to work with rapid flows or the result would be flooding. I don't know if these embryonic ideas will be the next generation of spin-out companies, but they're certainly strong candidates. And what I learn when I go around those laboratories is that the next generation of talent, given the chance, can become ingenious problem solvers for some of the biggest challenges facing us, that they excel when they combine their expertise, and in the process, they'll deliver great social as well as economic benefit. That is the prize. Innovation RCA is just raising its latest investment fund to fuel these spin-outs. Now, it must be said, the investment community, and again, Christopher alluded to this when he spoke to us first, the investment community and others have been a bit slow to catch on to the Createch opportunity, but there are some green shoots. Christopher's own AHRC is funding the new Createch project called CoStar, which will imagine the next stage of tech needed for our screen industries to thrive in an era of virtual production and immersive experiences. The Digital Catapult is a constant support, as will be DCMS's new Create Growth programme. Then the creative sector has its own advocacy organisation, as you know, Creative UK. And we're nothing if not innovative. Creative UK is also, uniquely actually for an advocacy organisation, it's also a venture investor in small creative companies. And it's raising a new fund at the moment. The British Business Bank is catching on and beginning to deploy funds to the small number of sector investors, but we've got a lot to do to get the message out. Compared to, say, life sciences, these are still very, very modest commitments. Now, a third catalyst for growth that we're backing in our sector vision is a drive for relevant skills. Any fast-growing sector will have a skills shortage. For instance, our rapidly growing TV and film businesses are currently short of everything from hairstylists to real-time game engineers. I think we have a cat in the room. No? Extraordinary noise. The screen industries are very, very short of skills, as I say. And in the new Garden Studios, nestling beside a biscuit factory in northwest London, they're reinventing production for film, TV, and online maker influences. As yet, no one has exactly the skill set needed for virtual production, now and in the future. A combination of real-time game engineering, film production, and live event experience. And talking of live event production, you may have read me asking in the FT, in an op-ed I wrote for the FT last week, whether folk know that Beyoncé is very big in Yorkshire. But that's where she actually stays for a week at what's called the production park near Pontefract, when the rig and digital design for her world tours are being designed, built, and rehearsed with. They're gathering a cluster of high-tech companies around them to service this R&D-led enterprise. And like Garden Studios, they've attached a college to train the next generation. But they're only scratching the surface compared to the demand we're going to see going forward. Delivering this talent base will be critical to future growth. But the biggest challenge of all is that as a sector, we have never properly explained ourselves to parents, teachers, and pupils. Last month, I went along to a top-ranked academy school in West London doing the Speakers for Schools programme. King Solomon's, it's called. I had the breakfast slot with their very bright first-year sixth formers. I talked to them about which games, music, TV, online, fashion, and video they consumed. They answered with great relish. But when I asked them then what were the jobs which produced all this intoxicating content, they had not a clue. So here's the point. We have a crucial task ahead of us to define the career pathways into our sector and our industries. If we don't, we'll fail to recruit the next generation of talent. There's another big challenge too. Over the past 10 years, the take-up of the GCSE design and technology appears to have fallen by a rather shocking 70%. These are the career technologists of the future. Why the decline? we have to find out and put it right. The output of the creative industries is, in effect, our national conversation. I think we all understand that. The games, the TV, the music, the advertisements, the publications are the means by which we develop and interrogate our values. But our sector is not as representative as it should be. If we claim to be the beating heart of our culture, then we need to draw on all communities. And we simply cannot tackle this without explaining to children what our career pathways are. So it is a critical task. There are lots of opportunities emerging at the moment. The introduction of local skills improvement plans, where companies can work together to define the skills they need from local FE and HE colleges. A lifelong loan entitlement that will bring talented people back into work or allow folk to switch sectors. And the emergence of degree apprenticeships and T-levels should mean we can embed training and education in our companies more dynamically. But if we haven't done the grunt work on career pathways, we'll never be able to capitalize on these opportunities. So, you'll have noticed a recurrent theme tonight, that though we're a young, emerging sector, and not everyone's caught on yet. The creative industries were defined in 1997. We were the first country ever to delineate such a sector, though many have now followed suit. Soon it was being measured by the ONS via the 9 key subsectors. I think you know what they are. But they added, not long after, actually, the publication that first Chris Smith did, a useful definition. And I think you all know it, industries which have their origin in individual creativity, skill and talent, and which have a potential for wealth and job creation through the generation and exploitation of intellectual property. Now, in the years since, we've moved on rapidly, but nevertheless not enough. Because in Britain, we over-inform ourselves on our traditional manufacturing sectors, and we under-inform ourselves about our sunrise sectors. I'm therefore very pleased that our very own Policy and Evidence Centre, PEC, our host today, is now having a new lease of life, funded by AHRC, as Chris outlined, and housed at the RSA and Newcastle University. We're going to need better data to inform fruitful future policies. For example, we think we export roughly 52 billion a year of goods and services. The real figure might be rather better than that. We need much better tracking of digital exports. We'll be looking to the PEC to come up with new, more sophisticated measures to capture the emerging stuff that's difficult to tie down and doesn't conform to the old norms of the last century. A good example is Createch, with its blend of skills creating a category that our cobwebbed old definitions don't recognize. Without that move forward, will always be a poor relation in our exploitation of things like R&D tax reliefs and the apprenticeship levy. But perhaps most important of all, there's a piece of work I'd really like to see the PEC champion. I haven't warned them about this, and they haven't said yes, but I'm going to say it anyway. Our sector is now one of 5 priority sectors for growth, according to the government. I've demonstrated this morning, I hope you think, the huge potential of R&D-led innovation that we offer, and that we've only just got started. So here's the key question. How much of the nation's research monies are devoted to the creative industries? How much is being invested in this sector that's growing employment massively faster than the economy in general, but with so much potential to go further? We don't have those numbers, but we should have those numbers. Just one more example of the data we need to make good policy going forward. My suspicion, by the way, is that a sector that's worth 6% of the economy gets less than 2% of the official research cake, and that other, much smaller sectors get much more. Well, let's find out, shall we? I should say it's a given that you can't invest in research simply on the size of a sector. The genuine opportunities for investment have to be there. But I think we've established today those opportunities assuredly do exist in the creative industries. One other thing to remember this morning, success for the creative sector also increasingly means success for the rest of the British economy, via the advertising and marketing that burnishes all our brands and drives sales, via the game engines that now enable product design in the car industry, via the VR and AR, which assists civil engineers and architects to create digital twins of cities, via the real-time technology that helps deliver mental health services. This, my friends, is the power of STEAM. S-T-E-A-M. And I'd like to hear you tell me what that spells. STEAM. Come on, wake up. STEAM. Thank you. Let's remember that word, STEAM. I hope I have demonstrated this morning that our sector is one of R&D-led innovation. We'll never grow our sector and seize the great Createch opportunity we have without good data and great analysis. So my closing message is for our hosts of this event, the PEC. And my message is wind in your sails. Thank you very much, and I wish you a fruitful conference today.